Everyone, I'm very, very pleased to have you have Scott Larson today with us in this new episode of Modern Aerospace. Scott Larson is the CEO of Alpha Insights, and I'm very, very happy to have you on board, Scott. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. Appreciate that. Happy to be here.
Amazing. So, I mean, today we have like a lot of different topic and question that I'd be happy to go through, both like on your background, the different ventures, and as well like the current companies that you are the CEO from. We're going to discuss about like space technologies, the different sensor, the diving technically to like all the details. So let's start like with a quick overview of your background. So your background is, I would say, like on the financial side. You were really working on the finance side before starting your entrepreneurship journey. So just let's talk like a little bit quickly on that background.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, my background is a combination of finance and technology. Um, Worked for a corporate finance advisory firm from kind of 2003 up until 2009 or 10, doing mergers and acquisitions, shareholder buyouts, restructuring, some turnaround stuff, mainly private companies who were looking to raise money for some type of transaction, either in some type of financial trouble, or the balance sheet was upside down, or there was issues on the income statement, or they had to do sale of business, shareholder buyouts, things like that, employee buyouts. And so we would come in as a firm, help support the transaction, bring in other investors to try to facilitate that. And prior to that, I was involved in a couple of .coms, internet companies, back in the mid 90s, so really early when it was the web. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, my background truly is a combination of finance and
And
uh, and,
technology.
tech, and technology.
Were you focusing on a specific market or industry when you were working for that company,
It was pretty
or were
broad.
you like
So,
yeah,
yeah,
pretty well?
pretty broad, low tech, usually manufacturing, industrial type companies based here in Vancouver, but going back and forth to Calgary quite a bit. So oil and gas services, trucking companies, things like that, companies that make tables or real estate or pipelines or things like that. So not a lot of high tech, but kind of industrial based manufacturing type of companies.
Wow. So I'm very excited to try to understand like how did you started with that type of position and started like after like your entrepreneurship journey.
Yeah, I mean, it was always entrepreneurship because, when you're kind of involved in corporate finance companies like this, there's a lot of sales and
Yeah.
it is entrepreneurial for sure. But my brother worked for a company called MDA in Vancouver here, which is Canada's largest aerospace firm. And there was an opportunity. His company had an opportunity to do some work with the Russian Space Agency on the International Space Station. Canada's a part of that, and so that's so. I mean, the background is that the Russian Space Agency had asked his company for a radar camera. His company
Hmm.
was the world leader in radar, and he got sent to basically Moscow to tell the Russian Space Agency, Roscosmos, we can't export a radar camera for the International Space Station. It's tricky technology. It's controlled. There's export issues with it and so forth. And so he was sitting in Moscow, and they began to brainstorm. Well, what else can we do? You can't give us radar. We get that. We understand that it is difficult technology. And he
Hmm.
said, how about a couple of webcams? It's kind of we'll take the optical cameras, we'll put them on the outside of the space station, we'll take the data, and then we'll stream it live online, kind of like a Google Earth, but live and updating. And they said, actually, you know what? That's perfect. This is what space is for. It's educational, it's humanitarian, it's inspirational. I mean, you look to
Hmm.
the heavens and so forth. And so they said, if you can give us a couple of optical cameras, we will love that. He came back,
Hmm.
talked to his company. His company said, too startup-y, too internet-y, too kind of app focused. They essentially work for the government kind of as a defense contractor. So then he came to me and said, is this a good idea? Putting cameras on the outside of the International Space Station and seeing where they're trying to stream it online. And can you raise 500,000 from some buddies, from some investors, from some friends to seed it. And I said, I think it's a great idea, and I think we can scrape together 500,000. And so we did. That was in we started the company in the fall, Christmas 2010. Scraped together 500,000, flew to Russia to meet Roscosmos, the space agency there, and said, let's see if we can put this together.
That that's amazing. And with those $500,000, what did you have? Did you have like a prototype of the
No,
of the
yeah,
camera?
nothing. I mean, and I didn't know anything about space. I mean, I don't know anything about space. It was very much, um, let's see if we can come up with it. So basically, I typed up a 2-page letter of intent in my basement here in Vancouver, very poorly written and just, full of mistakes. But it was, we'll give you the cameras, you do the launch to the space station, the installation, the power, the down, like maintenance, whatever it's needed, and then we'll split the data. You take the pictures of Russia and your neighbors, and we'll take the pictures of the rest of the world, and then we'll see what happens. And so very much a joint venture. We do something, you do something, we create some value. If we would have had to pay for the launch, it probably would have cost us about $100 million.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, if they would have had to pay for the data that they were going to get through this, it probably would have cost about the same. So, we'll do something, you do something, we'll create some value. It all kind of worked out, but that was the start. I mean, 500,000, just kind of covered some trips and some, some initial designs. But yeah, space is expensive. We needed more money for sure.
So you go to Russia and you arrive as with not really like any business history. I mean, within like your company, because it's a startup, it's newly created. You just arrive with this LOA and promise them like, if you sign that, we're going to be able to manufacture the camera. We're going to be able to deliver that. We're going to be able to handle like all the potential certification of that system to be directly sent and launched to the ISS, and they ended up like signing the LOA.
Yeah, they signed it, and yeah, we were far over our head. Like we were doing things that we were saying. It was very much, well, let's just see if this works out. Let's
Yeah.
see if we can figure this. And they understood it, and they knew that we were just going to try to see how this worked out. We had 2 cameras. One was, about the, size of a garbage can, kind of 1 meter by 2 or 3 meters in length, this big or so, in the size of a garbage can, mounted at the bottom of the space station, pointed directly down at Nader, so fixed. And it could see anything that was 5 meters big. So it
Mm.
had about a 50-kilometer wide swath, kind of looked down like this, down and wide, and anything
Mm.
that was 5 meters big, it would pick up. And then partway through the project, they came to us and said, "We have a pointable arm that there's some additional real estate that has come available on the outside of the space station. We can put an arm on it, and if you want, you can attach a camera to the bottom of the arm, so you can point it this way." So the first one was fixed, and the other one was pointable. And so that one was a little was essentially a video camera, color video camera. And so if the space station is flying over Vancouver or over the suburbs, looking at the farms and the fields, kind of fixed like this. The other one, we would point over the city and hold it for about a minute and get a 1 minute video clip of anything that was 1 meter big. So cars, buses, boats, golf carts. You could see kind of 3 or 4 people in white shirts on a green field. We saw a guy water skiing once. You could see it. So that type of stuff we could see. So it was a 1 minute video clip, and I think it's the world's first color video, first commercial color video of Earth from space.
And the fixed camera, what was the resolution?
5 meters. So agricultural, buses, roads, fields, farms, things like that, forests. You could see anything that was 5 meters big.
Okay, but at that time, I mean, the design itself of the cameras was basically introduced, and you did that after the LOI, after the fact that you raised some additional funding. But at the time where you went to Moscow to pitch the idea, you just have like maybe like early design.
Nothing.
Um,
No, yeah,
no,
not
oh,
even that.
okay.
Yeah, yeah. No design, no understanding of space, no understanding of how technically difficult it was going to be. Yeah, it was very much a concept, which is, let's see if we can come up with this. We'll give you the cameras. and then you do the installation, everything else. And so, yeah, no, they it was first time I walked into the board meeting there. There was they said there'll be 6 or 7 people there, and I walked in and there was about 35. So myself on one side of the room, 35 engineers on the other side, and very much in over my head. And we're just kind of walking through it. Everything's translation, English translation, Russian translation, back and forth. And so let's just see how this works.
Okay, so then after back to the US, trying to raise some money to basically try to fuel that project. Um, did you? The first thing is maybe like get like a good hire, someone that have like the experience to design space system, to try to understand like what's the complexity of it, and to try to build like a business plan for the fundraising. That's what you did.
Yeah, so there was 4 or 5 of us founders, myself, my brother, a couple of engineers, kind of technical guys that understood this. We had someone who acted as our liaison into the Russian market. So we just pieced it together, kind of let's put together a high level system design, raise a little more
Mm.
money, kind of lengthen that out, deepen that out. What is this going to look like? Um, we ended up raising $7 or $8 million in our seed rounds. Had Space is expensive, so that the cameras cost 2 or 3 times more than we thought, and everybody costs went up through the roof, and especially manned space, human space. When you're putting cameras into the space station with the people, these
Mm.
safety requirements, go through the roof. Because if it's a piece of equipment and this thing starts to smoke, is the smoke toxic? Is it poisonous? Is it going to kill the astronauts? As an example. So you had to go back and research all the parts that go into it to make sure that it's not toxic, it's not poison. If it's not going to melt, it's not going to explode, things like that. So the human safety, the human, the safety part of human space flight makes
Mm.
everything significantly more expensive, of course. Anyways, raise a little more money, piece it together, put together a business plan, selling pictures into the Earth observation industry, and took it public in the summer of 2013. So 2.5 years after we started the company, we ended up,
Before the launch or after?
yeah, before the
No,
launch,
before the
before the launch
launch.
of the cameras. So the cameras were almost done. The cameras got launched in the fall, Christmas 2013. So we took it public 6 months before the cameras were launched on a Soyuz rocket out of Kazakhstan,
Mm.
Baikonur. So the cameras were almost done. They were built by a company in the UK called Rutherford Appleton Labs, which is in Oxford. Company here in Vancouver called MDA. They did the software. The folks in the UK kind of did the hardware, the lens, the optics. Put those two things together, shipped it to Russia. They did some analysis, and then they shipped it to Kazakhstan, where the rocket got launched from. And so that process took a long time. But yeah, we went public before the cameras were launched.
Okay. And then after like your business model on that business is just like selling the data that the Russian agency didn't need from the rest of the world. That's what's the
Basically,
business.
yeah. So yeah, so that was the business plan: is let's take these pictures. We have two. We have both color, or, video, as well as still, kind of different markets. Um, the still picture it's kind of fairly generic. There's lots of other satellites up there with that type of imagery, with that type of cameras. The color video one was highly unique. And let's see if we can take these two different data sets, build up 3D models. You're taking pictures of something from this side, from that side,
Mm.
build up 3D elevation models with that kind of data set. And let's see where that goes. And so it truly was selling into the Earth observation industry.
Okay, so how did you exit that business? Once everything was launched, when did you decide to exit and to
So
say like,
we took it public in the summer of 2013.
mm,
Cameras were launched 6 months later, installed, huge technical difficulties. I mean, the space station is hard, kind of floats through space like this. Like, it's not a stable platform. It's kind of floating like this. It is all three: pitch, roll, and yaw. And so you have cameras on there. It's moving about 25,000 kilometers an hour. It's about 400 kilometers above Earth,
mm,
and it both floats like this slowly, and then at the same time it's vibrating fast. So you have this platform like this, and you try to take a picture, and it's going like this, and then it's also going like this so high frequency, low frequency vibration, huge technical difficulties, of course. I stepped down as CEO
Scott,
Christmas
just a quick
15.
question on this, like just where the software, like you were analyzing the image, I guess like real time, and were you like doing like some kind of like post or pre-production on the image that you had? Was it like something done on the ground by on the software, or just embedded on the system?
For sure on the ground. So the data would come down. You have to stitch it all together. Uh, do a fair amount of post production just
Okay.
because of the vibration and the mechanism and just all of it. And in fact,
Okay.
even getting the data down was difficult because the space station is flying over Earth, and so there was all kinds of. And then Russia invaded Crimea, of course, which made everything more difficult from a travel standpoint and just the geopolitics around it. It was always fun, but it certainly got harder. There's no question it got harder. I
Okay.
left Christmas 2015, so about 5 years to the day from when we started it. Stepped down as the CEO. We had raised a couple hundred million. It was maybe 250 employees. We'd done an acquisition of another company in Spain that had its own satellites. So we had two other satellites in space. We had a couple cameras on the space station. And the idea was you'd end up with, 3 or 4 different satellites, all taking pictures, different things, different angles, different schedules, different timelines, things like that. I stepped down in Christmas 2015 to do another satellite startup, which was focused on satellite communications. We were using satellites to pick up connected IoT type data. So
Mm.
small devices on Earth that transmit data to space, kind of ping up location data or environmental data or things like that. Launch some satellites, pick up the data, and then do some analytics on the ground.
On this specific venture, you were not targeting like the same type of customer, right? Because like the business model there was really like using sensors for the determining like what is the location, some specific data that the sensor was able to capture and transmitting that like real time, right? That's the
Yeah. So EarthCast was very much Earth observation, taking pictures of Earth from space for environmental, agricultural, forestry, asset tracking for those purposes.
Hmm.
Earth observation. The second business, the company had Spectrum, which is the right under the UN to send data from Earth to space.
Okay.
If you're sending data horizontally this way, it's monitored and regulated by the country. So Canada owns the airspace up to kind of 100 kilometers. U.S. owns up to 100 kilometers. Anything above 100 kilometers is kind of considered space. That's roughly how it works. So if it's airspace below 100 kilometers, it's airspace. If it's above, it's outer space. And so if you're sending data from the ground to space, it's kind of regulated by the UN. They kind of track it. There's other groups involved. It's not quite that simple, but the UN had given this company Spectrum, which is the right to send data from Earth to space. And so the plan was to put together kind of hubs on the ground that would pick up data from other remote devices on the ground. Gets kind of through wireless networks on the ground for environmental tracking, for weather monitoring, for tracking animals, cows, elephants, things like that in various parts of the world. Shipping containers, you put a
Mhm.
device on the container as it leaves the factory in China, and it tracks location. It tracks temperature, maybe. Is it too hot? Depending on kind of what's in the container. It tracks vibration, and it might track if someone tried to open the door or not. Is someone trying to steal something out of the container? All the way from the factory to the train to the ship across the ocean, it just pings the information up, beeps it up every few minutes. The satellite picks it up, collects the data, sends it down, and then you see where your containers, your trains, your ships, your assets on the ground are. You
Hmm.
put the device on a pipeline. Is it shifting? Is it twisting? Is it tilting? Forestry, you're tracking if people are moving through the forest, things like that. And so just kind of ping it up to space. We had the ability to track 5 billion devices in terms of how much spectrum. So a huge allocation. We launched two satellites, small satellites the size of a backpack, one on a Russian Soyuz and then one on a SpaceX out of Los Angeles. And then we sold that about 4 years ago in 2019 to EchoStar, a large satellite operator out of Colorado. And
Okay.
I think we still hold the record for shortest time between incorporation and launch, which is about 15 months. So kind of cool, but two satellites.
So and how long you've been on that specific company?
Yeah, so we started it in 2015, essentially, kind of 2016, and then sold it about 4 years later, 20
For you.
kind of late 2019.
And when you started, what was the how big was the company at the time? It was
It was nothing. Yeah, no, it was nothing. There was just kind of a shell of a company that had been granted the rights for the spectrum. And
okay.
so there was a couple of guys who were already kind of associated with it, three people, in fact. But it was nothing there. And so I got involved. We all put together the business plan and what does the market look like? Raised a little bit of money, raised 13 or $14 million from some high net worth angels and other partners. Got the satellites built and then launched. And I would have liked to stay there, but the timing was right, and everybody wanted to get out, and the market was difficult, and there's more competitors coming in, and so we sold, and it all kind of worked out okay.
Okay. Perfect. I mean, that's a good second success story on this exit. Okay, so and from that company, what happened and how did you ended up on the next venture?
Yeah, so then in the fall of 2020, just over 4 years ago, I got a call from the new CEO and CFO of Earthcast, my first company.
Mm.
I'd met him, but I didn't really know them that well. There had been one or two that had kind of come and gone, and so I got a call on a weekend. They called up and they said I was still a shareholder. It was still a public company. They called up and they said we have a problem. We had a financing that fell apart. We need
Mm.
$1 million by Wednesday to get into bankruptcy protection. And I
Wow.
said, I'm sorry to hear that. I'm not, still a shareholder. Sorry to hear that. I said, I'm not a bankruptcy protection kind of guy. I'm not unfamiliar with it, but it's very, very procedural. You kind of go to the judge and you'd say, we want a little protection for us to figure out our business plan. So no one can sue us. No one can come after us. We just need a few months to kind of get this fixed. And in Canada, it's called CCAA. And so myself and a few friends, other people, put in the $1 million. It got into protection. And when you get into CCAA, you do kind of one of two things. You either restructure with the people you owe money to, your employees, your customers, people, just everybody else and you say, we'll pay you 10 cents on the dollar. We owe you 5 million. We'll give you 500,000. But you come out of it smaller, but stronger. Or you sell the assets. And in this case, the judge said, it's time to sell the assets. So they had three different buckets of assets. One was sold to a private equity group out of New York, kind of a software processing division, optical, focused on optical data, was sold back to those guys. They had two existing satellites that we had purchased. Actually, when I was at Earthcast, those two satellites were still in orbit. They sold that back to a group out of Portugal and Spain. And then the third asset was a business unit inside the company focused on building out synthetic aperture radar.
Mm.
It started it 5 or 6 years before, and the judge ordered this division, this asset, up for auction. And so all of the tech, all the patents, all the IP, the customer relationships, the employees who wanted to be part of it, basically everything was put up for auction. And because of COVID, the borders in Canada were closed. There was a 2-week quarantine. You couldn't get in. And so we decided, the people who put in the $1 million that got the company to protection, we decided to see if we could try to buy it. And so kind of a unusual financial transaction where we took the $1 million and converted that into part of the acquisition price for this group of assets, which was unusual but interesting.
And does the fact that you investing on that $1 million to protect the company give you some kind of priority on the bidding process when
Nothing.
the
No,
no.
no. It was no. Didn't make any difference. These were two separate transactions that we just kind of linked together. It was open. Other people were bidding. Other groups were looking at it. It was difficult to do due diligence because people from outside Canada couldn't fly in, and even flying inside of Canada and the whole thing,
Mm.
right? So it was difficult, and there was a 2 week quarantine in Canada that was so no, it didn't make any difference. It didn't make any difference that I'd been there before, that I used to work for the company. It didn't make any difference that we put in $1 million. It was an open auction, and whoever bid the most was going to win. It
So
certainly
okay,
helped that
so
I knew the company
yeah.
and knew some of the folks and knew the technology, and was comfortable with that. But that was it.
Yeah, because at that point in time, only few people had the time to do like a proper due diligence on the technology. So few people were really able to risk like that investment on the
Yep,
technology without really knowing that. Okay, so
100% true. It was, yeah, it helped.
yeah, it helped. Yeah, you were like right at the right timing, where you started to learn on the technology, helping the company. So that's, yeah, that's opportunity.
Yeah.
So what did you purchase in terms of the technology? How developed was the technology, and yeah, what did you do
Yeah,
with
it
it?
was. They had spent about 6 years on it.
Okay.
They'd put about $65 million into building the technology. So it's hard technology. So all the tech, all the patents, all the IP, um, everything that had been developed over the last 6 years, over the last $65 million, all of that was put up for auction. We bought it all. Everything to do with the radar, with this technology, was part of the IP purchase, and we bought the whole thing.
Okay, and what's the technology readiness level that
Yeah, it's a good question. Radar is hard. Synthetic aperture radar technology is hard. There's a few pieces that make our technology unique, and frankly, in our opinion, better than anybody else's. But it was basically most of the subsystems were fairly complete and had been through a certain amount of space qualification analysis. The engineering models were kind of all done. Various levels of the bench satellite models were all done, and so it was a matter of getting our heads wrapped around what each of those subsystems were, and then kind of converting from physics and science, which is what had happened in the past, into engineering. Let's take each one of these subsystems and put it into a single system. So from a TRL level, maybe 5 or 6 on an individual subsystem level, but then they had to be converted into a single system, tied together just into a single system. And so that's what we've spent the last couple of years doing, actually, is basically taking those individual systems that were all reasonably well developed and integrating them into a single system that that can be built for launch.
because individually those subsystems were not ready to be commercially launched because of the fact that they didn't provide individually like the value that the market is providing, and you had to combine them to have like an innovating product. That's the situation.
Individually, they're useless. They're,
Okay.
so TRMs, transmit and receive modules, basically the devices that send the data from Earth to space. If that's not connected up to something else, to a power supply, to a processor, to chips, to this and that, to then it's so on an individual system basis, not a lot of value until they're combined.
Hmm. And what was your impact on the strategy? Did you, where the previous company had that strategy to combine those systems, or this is something that you guys
No, no, no. Yeah.
implement?
So no, they were on the path, right? So they
Okay.
were doing this. They got into financial difficulty. They had
Okay.
some own issues, and so they, yeah, no, they. I don't think we did anything in terms of we hurried it up for sure, and we were
Yeah.
more focused.
Yeah.
But in terms of the technology development, we took what they were doing, changed it a little bit for our focus, but continued it.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds good. So, can you talk like a little bit more about like the product? How does that work? What's the different subsystem? How do they work together? I mean, I saw as well on the website the use of machine learning, AI. How does everything play together?
Yeah, so we are an Earth observation company. So we build technology that allows you to take pictures of Earth from space.
Mm,
There's two different, generally two different ways to do it. One would be with an optical camera, a lens that you attach to a satellite, you launch it up, and as the satellite flies over Earth, you take a picture, and it's a picture with lenses and mirrors and things like that. And some look down wide, and some are high resolution, and there's all different depending on what you want to look at. There's different types of lenses for it. The problem is most of the time it's too dark. So it's dark
mm,
60% of the time. It's cloudy 70% of the time. I'm in Vancouver, it's cloudy way more than that. So most of the time with a satellite, with an optical lens on it, you can't see Earth. You see
mm,
clouds or you see dark. So the satellite flies around Earth, travels around Earth. You wait till you get into the sun. It's in the sun now. Is it cloudy? If it's cloudy, we're not even taking a picture. If it's sunny, then let's see if it's. And so if you want to take a picture of the Amazon over the forest in Brazil to track deforestation, you have to wait until the satellite is over the Amazon because Earth is spinning like this and it's flying around. And so you have to wait till it's over the Amazon. You have to wait until it's sunny or during the day. And then hopefully it's sunny at the same time. And all those things have to line up. The
mm,
other way is with called synthetic aperture radar. And our version of it is basically a large flat panel, kind of 6 feet by 18 feet. So the size of a parking spot, if you will, about that big. You mount it to the bottom of a satellite, and as the satellite flies over Earth, it sends down an electrical pulse. The pulse hits the ground, it bounces back up, and then the reflection is interpreted into an image. And
mm,
because it's electrical pulse, you can see at night, you can see through
mm,
clouds, you can see through weather, through rain, through storms. Our technology is called SAR XL. So it operates in both X and L frequencies. The L band looks down and wide about 250 kilometers. So as the satellite flies over Earth, it looks down like this. And the X band can see things as small as 40 centimeters. So you get the wide coverage, you get the high resolution. If you're imaging over the forest, the X band kind of hits the tops of the trees and bounces off. That's just kind of the
mm,
characteristics of the radio waves. The L band will penetrate through the trees, through the canopy, through the biomass, and in certain cases underground, 10 or 15 feet. The L band is the environmental band. It can pick up water, moisture levels. If you're imaging over water on the ground, you can determine is that fresh water, salt water, sewage. You can pick up elevation changes down to the millimeter level.
mm,
So if the ground shifts by as little as half a centimeter, you can see that from space because the waves are coming down like this. Next time they're coming down like this. So you know that ocean levels, water levels, soil erosion, agriculture, forestry, farming, things like that. Pipelines, are the pipelines shifting? Is a bridge twisting buildings? Is a building about to twist? Things like that. You can see all that from space.
Can you compare that with other sensors, lidar? How does that integrate, and what's
Yeah,
the core? Yeah.
LiDAR is tricky from space, although it is, there is, usually LiDAR is much lower. So because the radio waves penetrate underground and they go deep underground, 50 feet, 100 feet, more in certain cases. And so that's really for imaging underground. And you need to be close to the ground to do it, or with planes. You can fly over with planes, but you're close.
Mm,
With the satellites, of course, you're 500 kilometers away. It's imaging all of Earth. It's going fast. So, but there is certainly a concept of space is Earth observation from space is good for. We want to cover wide areas. I want to image all of the Middle East, all of Eastern Europe, all of the farms in northern Canada, all of the forests in Western Ontario or in California that are burning, things like that. We want to image everything. That's good from space because you can see 300 kilometers at a time, and you fly over, and suddenly you can image 1,000 kilometers in a day or more for sure. Wide coverages, wide things like that. And then if you see something interesting, then you go aerial. Let's fly over with planes. Let's fly over with a drone. Or in certain cases, now let's send people on the ground with LiDAR to see if there's oil, geological things underground that we want to really dig into. So these different
Hmm.
data sets certainly work together.
Sounds good. I'm curious to try to really understand like the engineering challenge that you saw like in that company to develop the product, maybe compared to your previous experience with the developing like the camera for the ISS. How did they compare together?
Yeah, so the camera for the ISS, it's an interesting question. Technology was complicated, complex, but mainly software because you're taking an optical picture. You know, there's lots of cameras in space, and they've
Hmm.
been building this kind of technology since the 70s, really. So certainly there's lots of lenses, and yeah, there's different sizes, different things, but that technology is fairly well baked. Now, when you want to put on the space station, it gets harder because vibration. The video camera made it even harder because there's more vibration in the camera, and you're trying to take a picture over a certain, downtown area. This thing's vibrating, and it just all of the software side of that made it complex. And
Hmm.
then on top of that, you layer in geopolitics and what's going on around the world and different things like that, and that made
Safety
it hard. Yeah,
and
yeah,
yeah, safety for the design because of the
safety,
ISS.
travel, visas, just all that kind of stuff just made it hard.
Hmm.
Uh, this technology is much harder. Synthetic aperture radar technology. Historically, there's only been kind of 3 or 4 companies that participate in the commercial side of this. So it's always been on the optical side. There are hundreds of satellites in space right now.
Hmm.
Universities send it up, school groups, companies, nations. There was hundreds of satellites up there with optical lenses on radar side. Historically, there's been the Canadians and the Italians and the Germans, basically 3 providers. So it's much more consolidated, much more restricted. Three providers into the market. There's another 4 or 5 that have kind of come into it in the last 3 or 4 years, but much smaller, much harder technology. The data set is much better. You get much better information out of it. Um, so technology is harder. It's much more unique. It's much more beneficial than optical. But there's other issues that are kind of in the mix to make running a business, trying to grow a startup, equally hard. Everything is hard.
How does that your technology compare with legacy solution which is currently used by the different legacy player? What's
Yeah,
the
it's
yeah.
yeah. So having there's a couple things that make our technology unique. One is both different data sets, X and L. So
Mm,
usually you either look at wide or you look at high resolution, one
mm,
of the two. And if it's high resolution, you get a small field of view, 2 miles by 3 miles. I want a
mm,
picture of that. So focus in. It's like you're zooming in with your lens. You zoom in with the lens. It gets higher and higher resolution, but the field of view gets smaller and smaller. Or you want a wide angle. You look out wide, but you can't really see the details. You just look at the whole. So we have the ability to put those two different things on the same payload, which is unique. The
mm,
other thing that is unique, and this was technology that was funded by the Canadian government, is the ability to have the L band task the X band. So this is where the machine learning that you talked about comes into play.
mm,
So normally you want to take pictures of Earth from space. I want to take a picture of this farm, of this airport, of this harbor, of this forest. You take the GPS coordinates and you upload it. As the satellite flies over, you send the data up. It says, take a picture of these 4 locations. It flies over, takes a picture, takes a picture, takes a picture, and then the data comes down and you get the pictures on the ground, which is good if you know what you're looking for. We have the ability to use the L band to decide what the X band should take a picture of. So say this thing is flying over the Gulf of New Mexico. Most of the time it's imaging over the water, over the ocean. It sees nothing. Open sea. There's nothing to see there. It just kind of surveillance. It sees whatever it sees, which most of the time, as it flies over the Gulf, is nothing. And then off to the side, the L band sees something long and narrow. It says,
mm,
that's interesting. That I've been told to take a picture. It'll automatically direct the X band over to take a high resolution picture. So first you get surveillance, then you get identification. Is that a ship? It is a ship. Then you get into classification, which is what type of ship is it? Is it military or commercial? Let's say it's commercial. Is it a freighter or tanker? Let's say it's a tanker. And then ultimately information, which is how full is it based on analyzing the wake, how far is it sitting down in the water, how fast is it going, where is it going, and so you get the information. So, and all that happens in real time in orbit.
How
And
is
if you realize that there's 50 tankers in the Gulf of New Mexico and they're all full of oil, the price of oil is going to come down because there's lots of supply, as an example.
how does the customer request the shot? I mean, like, is that how the AI is predicting what need to be of interest? How does that work?
Yeah, so we have to set the parameters. So parameters are you're flying over the ocean, you see something long and narrow, take that picture. Or you're flying over a pipeline and you see that the pipeline has shifted, which means it might be about to crack. Or the forest has gotten bigger or is dry. And if it's a
Mm,
dry forest and we get a lightning next week, there's a forest fire. Or the
mm,
farms, are the fields this much higher? Or a military base for your neighbor or inside your country. Is there a new building added to the military base that wasn't there last time? Is a
mm.
volcano that's been inactive for the last 20 years, is it smoking? If it's smoking, take a high resolution. Is the water level in the in the lake, is it down below this level? If it is, we want to know about it. Are the icebergs shrinking? Yeah, so it's both dual purpose, government as well as commercial. Is the flooding in this area, is it as bad as we thought it was? Insurance, asset tracking, infrastructure monitoring, things like that. And so you set the parameters of the machine learning, and the satellites to a certain extent get a little smarter. They get a
Mm.
little smarter on what they should take pictures of. And that is unique.
So it's not only like the real time image or what the camera, I mean, the sensor is seeing, but as well, like it's able to compare historical data to see change. And when the change match specific criteria, it does trigger like the AI to take that
Yeah,
information. Yeah, to
it
highlight
triggers
that.
the reaction. So if you're flying over the ocean and most of the time there's nothing to see because they just open water, and then we see something long and narrow in the water, let's take a picture of that, it gets triggered. And yeah, I mean, so to your question, some customers just want to know where the ships are, as an example. Other customers go, anytime you're flying over the Amazon, I want the picture. I don't care about the picture. I don't care about the ships. I want to know what the price of oil is going to be. And so then that's the downstream analytics. You're taking all the data, you're combining it with other data sets. What's going on in the Middle East? What's going on with oil production out of South America? What's going on with whatever? How many ships are in the Gulf of New Mexico? And you're mashing it together, and you're saying the price of oil is going to go up.
Wow. Okay, so really like the use case, it's not only like this is my area of interest and I want to see like what's the evolution on that specific piece of land, but it's more like you can have multiple type of different requests from any type of customers,
For
and
sure.
your job is to basically determine like how to solve that specific use case and how to scientifically bring the information that's provide like a valuable feedback on what is the question. That's really
Yeah, I mean, some customers, pictures of Earth from space are usually used for two things. One is to kind of see how things have changed over time, forestry, farming, agriculture, your neighbors, what's going on, how have things changed. But really, they're designed to predict the future. So based on the change that we see, what is going to happen next week, 2 weeks? You're taking pictures of the farms in Western Europe, and you're determining how well the crops are doing. Is this going to be a good year for wheat or bad? Based on the crops right now, they're growing at, this height, this health, this whatever else, and we know that it's going to be sunny for the next 3 weeks. This is the price of grain. Or from a country standpoint, do we need to import grain? Can we export based on how well we're doing? And so it's allowing decision makers to make better decisions and hopefully predict what's going to happen.
because your business model is a service business. I mean, you're definitely like manufacturing like the sensors, the equipment, the AI to and ship that directly in space. But really, like what you provide as a service is really like the analysis of the information, and that is what you provide as a service business, right?
Yeah, some companies, some customers only want the data. They go, we're going to do all the analysis in house. So take every time you take a picture of the Amazon, send it to us. We're going to determine. Some companies have that. Some customers have that those capabilities in house. Lots don't. They just want tell us what's going on. Tell us if the farm just give us the answer, and then we'll decide what to do with it.
Mm.
So hedge fund, financial people, is the price of oil, trading, things like that. That's what it's used for. Um, the problem is that there's not a lot of radar data available. It's hard to get because there's so few providers. And
Mm.
so having the ability to predict environmental issues, forestry issues, agricultural issues, when the data is so restricted, is difficult. And so, yeah, the goal is to be a downstream software analytics company, but you can't do that unless you have access to the data. And
Mm.
so we build the technology, we work with other governments and companies and partners and things like that to get this radar launched and in space. It starts to generate data, and then we do with it what we do with it based on where the demand is.
Yeah, some of the data, I'm guessing like if you have like contract with, I mean, government to even like to fund the launch of the satellites, they may take like a portion of the data, but allows you to use like the remaining or some of their data as well, depending
Yeah,
on
that's
the contract.
exactly right. Yeah, so you're working with a country. They go, listen, we'll support this. We want all the data over our neighborhood. In country, what our neighbors are doing, whatever the use case is, we want that data. And then we go, fine, you can have that. We'll take the data of the rest of the world. If someone from Eastern Europe, to use kind of a very, they care about what's going on in Europe. They don't really care, or they care less about the icebergs in northern Canada, the
Mm.
forest fires down in Australia, the Amazon. They care about their neighborhood, what's going on with their area of interest. You take all that, we'll take the rest of the world.
That sounds good. Very, very, very interesting. What's the next steps on your side
Yeah,
in
so
terms?
yeah, so it's we're built. We started with 11 people. There's about 22, 23 of us now, all kind of engineering side. We spent the first 6 months when we started the company 3 years ago trying to figure out exactly what we had done and why, and was this a good decision? Then we spent a couple of years kind of moving the technology along and really getting our heads wrapped around where the market was from a technology standpoint, what we had acquired, how to put these subsystems into a single system. In the last 6 8 months, we started to talk to customers, and so we have three different buckets of customers. One is customers who go, I want a space program. So these are typically countries who come
Mm.
in and say, we'll work with you. You do the payload, the antenna. We'll bring in a satellite, a bus. You put these two things together. It gets launched on a SpaceX. But those are countries who are looking for space capabilities, radar capabilities from space. And it's a huge funnel in that, far more than we have, than we're able to build out. It's about 1.5 billion. It's a huge funnel there. Second would be customers who go, I don't want satellites. I just want data. $2 million worth of data per year to track the Amazon, to look at the forest fires, to do whatever else. Just give us some data. And so those would be the second group of customers. And the third would be the idea of being able to build and launch our own satellites over time that are kind of backed by the customer contracts who want the data. So if you have enough customers to say, we want $300 million worth of data per year, you take that, you get it financed, you build your own satellite, and you kind of go from there. So yeah, where we are is we're moving the technologies along. We are working with our customers to make sure that we have enough demand, there's enough customer visibility, both on the hardware as well as on the data side. We continue to raise financing from investors who want to support this to be part of it. And so all kind of, technology, business, revenue, operations, while trying to move all four of those forward at the same time.
When do you target to I mean launch the first satellites?
Yeah, so first launch, we're hoping for fall, late 2025,
Okay.
and then look to kind of scale from there. I mean, we'll never build 15 of these things, but maybe 4 or 5. So you have kind of 4 or 5, flying around like this, different customers, different focuses from an operational standpoint. And with 4 or 5 satellites, we're imaging all of Earth, um, a couple times a day.
Hmm. Okay. Well, that's amazing. How to basically keep to be updated on your company, your project, the news directly, I guess, like the your website.
Yeah, the
With
website. Yeah, so yeah, sign up on the website from an operational standpoint, from a kind of update standpoint. There's some good stuff on there. There's some good white papers that we've put on there about what the market is, what the use cases for people who are interested in or who are looking for data, so they can be partners in terms of getting access to the data when the first satellites go up. We've signed a bunch of customers who go, on the data side, and so yeah, we're for sure there's lots of capacity there. Each satellite will take about 15 terabytes of data per day, so it's a huge amount of data. And so yeah, we're inching forward.
Thank you so much, Scott, for taking the time to have this discussion together. Really appreciate, and yeah, looking forward to get updated on everything.
Thanks, Jeremy. Appreciate that.
Take care.